All right, everyone, welcome back to another edition of the History Buffs. This week we're doing something a little different. We're going to start talking about the historic Middle East peace accords that were recently signed on the south wall of the White House a couple of weeks ago, I believe now, maybe a week or so ago. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and why it's so important, and then obviously we'll jump back into the history of the Middle East, of Israel, as much as we can until we get sidetracked by Ned or RA somehow. But I just mentioned him, joined once again by Ned Snark.
Hi.
There he is. RA.
Hello.
RA.
I didn't know we were going to do a whole introduction. Okay.
Austin from New London. Well, we have a special guest.
That's true.
And our special guest, Tim and Canton. So we were joined by half of the OG Menafan show. Tim, the late edition. We were trying to get that new guy, Harry from Arkansas.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
He's from Kansas, Arkansas.
He's a night landscaper, so he couldn't join.
Yeah, right. He's on the clock right now doing stuff around trees, he said.
Yeah, stuff around trees and weed whacking at night.
Well, it's the best time to it gets hot there during the day, so I guess it's a good time to work.
Kansas, Arkansas, yeah.
Good point.
That's right.
Right around the border there of Kansas and Arkansas.
Well, I just hope his nose was going to be okay because it looked like it was pretty damaged.
It looked like he was going through chemo, like DJ said. Yeah.
Yeah. Must be able to
peeling shit off his own face. It's not good.
Yeah.
Right.
The moon give off UVS rays, I guess.
UV rays.
Very little.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. Not enough to give yourself skin cancer, but.
So we want to get Tim in here, get his thoughts on the Middle East in general. And I'm sure he has some strong takes to come with that. But
hot takes.
Hot, as always. But wanted to dive in real quick talking about the Abraham Accords peace agreement. Abraham Accords peace agreement. The White House official statement is the Treaty of Peace, Diplomatic Relations, and Full Normalizations between the United Arab Emirates and the State of Israel. Basically, all it means is UAE or AEU.
UAE.
United Arab Emirates. UAE.
There we go.
Is essentially acknowledging the state of Israel in the Middle East, which is actually really big news because since Israel was created in 1947, no country really has done that regularly. There's been some talk There have been some talks, some agreements. I think in 1994 there was an agreement with peace in the Middle East. Obviously, it didn't stick. There hasn't been too much peace going on between Israel and multiple countries, multiple factions of fundamental Islamists, right? Different groups, different terrorist organizations. So I just want to go around and get everyone's thoughts on the peace accords at first, and I'm sure we'll dive into different rabbit holes as we do that. So we'll start with the elder statesman. Ned, would you like to take the reins on this one?
Unless you want to defer to Tim.
I would defer to Tim and let Ned go last.
I would say that's a good idea.
We'll go around the other way then. Tim, go ahead. I was gonna go top to bottom. I'll go bottom to top. Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, KDL, and thanks guys for having me on. I love the show, love history, love the show. So I'm really flattered to be on, and I just have to ask if the Abraham Accords are named after the Boston sports writer Pete Abraham, is it because he wears the same sneakers as, I don't know, the premier of the UAE?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
he made him a mix.
That's exactly right.
Did he make him a mix?
Such an ass clown.
That guy sucks.
What an amazing event that just occurred, like you said, KDL, over the last 10 days with Bahrain and UAE signing off on a peace accords. Let's face it, Saudi Arabia is those two vassal states. It's a hegemony. They did not do that without the blessing of Saudi Arabia. And I think that speaks volumes to what Saudi Arabia would like to see happen. I don't know. Do you guys think it's kind of like a balloon to put up and see, okay, how does the world accept this? And is Saudi Arabia next? Or is this the extent of what's going to happen?
I think it's definitely feelers because you wouldn't have Saudi Arabia do it at first. If they're the biggest, if they're the big, cat in the block, I guess, out in the Middle East, they would have, like you said, they'd have like their vassal states do it first, get the feelers out, and see what happens. But I do think it's a step in the right direction. You actually have countries like legitimately recognizing Israel because, for the longest time since Israel's been on the map, they've been surrounded by people who don't even acknowledge their right to exist.
Exactly.
which is a pretty tough situation. But if I don't think you're going to get anywhere unless Palestine is fully on board. That's my only. And they also, Trump didn't mention Palestine at all. Neither did I can't pronounce the Israeli guy's name. Rahu but yeah, there was no mention of Palestine. No mention of Palestine whatsoever. And I just don't think that you're going to see any real results without Palestine on board. But I do agree with him that it was just like feelers, and that it was just the vassal states at first. But if Saudi Arabia, if that's the next big domino to go, then you're going to see some stuff happen really quickly.
Also, what do you think?
Gotta go.
Yeah,
last.
I mean, I think so. You, KDL, you said Israel was founded in 1947. It's taken this long. I can't do the math off the top of my head, but 70
over
years.
70 years.
Yeah, over 70 years it's taken for any of the other countries in the Middle East to recognize Israel's existence. I think that speaks loudly to how the Trump administration executed this. I think they got rid of everybody from all the old politicians and did it like a business transaction. I mean, Kirk was talking about this on the show last week, and I think this is a new way to start negotiating with the Middle Eastern countries, especially. I mean, obviously, there's so much oil over there, so if you can negotiate with a business mind, I think you'll get a lot farther with them, because they're all theocracies or whatever. They all are so religious and they're driven by that. But if you can get them to back away from that and talk with a dollar sign instead, I think more dominoes will fall.
Yeah, and the U.S. has proved that military force doesn't necessarily work in dealing with Middle Eastern conflicts. So I think a new approach has been welcomed. It's
definitely not going to work there. I mean, you're just going to have constant guerrilla fighting over there, as you've seen. I mean, forever. Since the existence of Israel and throughout the Cold War, there was just constant guerrilla fighting. Either it was against us or it was against the Soviet Union and Afghanistan. So a constant military presence is not always the answer. So I think if you can, like I said, talk with a dollar sign instead, I think you'll get a lot farther.
Yeah, Ned?
I think the strategy behind it is twofold. It is business. The deals are with the U.S. as a tripartite partner in the deal. So right after the accords were signed, I believe the U.S. did a trade deal with the UAE for some fighter jets, not Israeli made fighter jets, U.S. made fighter jets. So that happened. That was announced right after. Dubai,
I think.
Yeah, Dubai is the financial capital of the Middle East, and it's made that way. It's the security there is very, very tight. If you've noticed, there's never been a hint of any type of trouble from extremist groups in the 7 Emirates, especially in Dubai, because it's where money is. So this is they are theocratic, of course, but they're also very secular and more Western than any other country on the Arabian Peninsula. And they're, of all the Emirates, their brothers and sister Emirates, they're the most open. So this is a huge step and a logical one, but it's not the first one, because they, Jordan and then even earlier Egypt, had treaties with Israel recognizing their right to exist. But this is the first one in a long time with countries that are active now. I mean,
I think it was since '94, Ned. I think '94 when that was signed. So over 25 years.
Yeah. So Jordan's I love King Hussein. I like his son Abdullah very much. But they don't really have much clout because they don't have any oil. They've got no natural gas, no natural resources. But they've had a stable monarchy, and they headed off the Arab Spring and handled it very well by giving people more rights immediately. So RA is correct. It's the Saudis are testing it first, but I also have to think the second part of this strategy is to isolate Iran. So the nations so far that have agreed to recognize Israel are Sunni nations. Shias, which is Iran predominantly. Iraq is both. Can be it's got a minority, a fluctuating population. I'm not sure where Turkey stands, but Turkey's another one who's vehemently against this accord. The Turks are just they're actually a different race as well. So are the Iranians. They're not Arabs. The Iranians are Persians. So I also see this as a way of strategically isolating Iran, and of course its terrorist arms, Hamas. They're the money behind Hamas and all the disruption in Palestine. So because Israel would absolutely work with a neutral Palestinian state, as they have with Jordan. They were working well with Syria up until the civil war 10 years ago.
Right.
They tried with Lebanon. That's always been a sore spot, hot and cold. But I think they would have given Palestine a fair shake if Hamas had not been funding terrorism. So I think there's a long-term strategy in this as well, as to isolate Iran.
Right, and going off of that too. With, I mean, Saudi Arabia, I think should be the next domino to fall, like Ari was saying, because that's really going to isolate Iran. Right, Saudi Arabia and Iran had their conflicts. Didn't Saudi Arabia fund Iraq during the Iraq-Iran war in what, the 80s, 1980 to what, pretty much
80 to 81 to 89, something like
Is
that.
that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that if Saudi Arabia joins, I think that's going to go a long way in isolating Iran, and that's going to help them in a position of, that's going to help the U.S. and Israel, obviously, but it'll help the U.S. dealing in a position of power with things like, renegotiating the nuclear arms, the nuclear deal that Obama signed first, and Trump basically threw out. So I think that's part of this too. I don't think it's just for Israel. Obviously, the U.S. is going to get something out of this, and I think it might be a long play out of the Trump administration trying to make that happen.
Correct, and the rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia goes back decades, and there's even they even dispute the Saudis dispute the name of the Gulf, and I have friends, Saudi friends, and they've always said, like, why is it called the Persian Gulf? It's not their Gulf, it's our Gulf. So it's that petty, and the disputes over the Straits of Hormuz as well, which is where most of the oil that's pulled out of the Middle East goes through that port, and that's a highly volatile, somewhat dangerous place, and the area would feel more secure if the Saudis had control over it and not Iran. And it's always been contested because Iran has threatened many times to blow it up or sink ships there, or they harass foreign vessels there. So the rivalry is real. The U.S. sanctions against, and the global, I should say, global sanctions against Iran have been working. So Saudi has risen in preeminence recently since Obama administration. And I think they want to just take advantage of that. And I would agree.
Right.
We got to end Hamas. Hamas has got to stop. Hezbollah as well, but Hamas has got to stop.
Right. So kind of going back in time a little bit, there's been a lot of obviously foreign intervention in the Middle East in the past 100 years. After World War I, you had France and England basically say, you guys take out the Ottoman Empire, you can then choose to have your own free states. That didn't happen. They go in and basically split up the Middle East the way they see fit. After World War II, the UN does I think we'd probably agree, a better job than what happened after World War I.
They didn't just draw a line.
Right,
Said, all right,
exactly.
you get above, you get below, pretty much.
Right. In giving Israel their Holy Land back, which I think it was probably well deserved after the suffering of the Jews during World War II. What is the best strategy to deal with the Middle East? Is it total isolation? Is this the right strategy in terms of business transactions instead of show of force? Is it different for different countries? It's like, is handling Iran or Syria different than handling Saudi Arabia, right? Because it's a place that for the United States there's one ally, right? I'd say Israel's the one ally, and
Israel is it.
Okay. I wouldn't even count Saudi Arabia or any. We get our oil. They're more business partners than allies, I'd say, right?
And at this point, we're not even getting that much oil from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Right.
Not anymore.
Right.
And Israel's the only democracy as well. If that's important.
So my question is, and Tim, we can go back to you on this. What's the best strategy in dealing with Middle Eastern countries? Is it country specific? Is it isolation? What do we think? What's the best strategy historically in dealing with these places?
Oh man, talk about a loaded question, right? That world leaders have been trying to figure out forever.
We're talking history.
But
the hell is this?
Tim, you've got 3 minutes. Can you fix it for us?
Summarize it real quick. I like it, but and you guys did warn me, but I think the latest iteration of the peace accords is I think the way to go. Business. I mean, like you just said, KDL, we are business allies of Saudi Arabia. They are not fans of ours. You guys know full well, Wahhabism is born and bred and alive and well in Saudi Arabia. Wahhabist, Shiite by sect.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is a ruling elite of Shia, Sunni excuse me, not Shia. They're all Sunni, which is ironic because Iran is Sunni as well, but they are not they're not simpatico with each other. So that tells me the business is what's going to drive the peace. I mean, people with jobs tend to have less of an axe to grind. It's just the way that it is. An idle hand, the devil's workshop. So I think that taking that tack, by the way, because of where we are today. I mean, Ned, I know you and I are of a certain age. I remember back when Egypt signed the peace accord. Well, let's face it, we're older, right? But I remember when that peace accord was signed, and that was a big deal. But that was a different way of addressing the issues in the Middle East. Egypt was going to the Soviets. Correct. Egypt was not America's ally. Correct. They were going to go either the Soviets or the United States. So we brokered a peace deal with them back in the 50s, 60s. And then they opened up a relationship with Israel, which really set the tone. But it never took on with anybody else. And I think a lot of it had to do with the economy. And I think where the economy is strong, I think that can drive a lot of peace deals that can be broken. They can also be broken, which is probably what's going to happen when economies go in the tank. So personally, I just think that this is the way to go. No boots on the ground, influence what we can, and let's face it, like Ned had said, what's in it for me? The business, as Calvin Coolidge said, the business of America is business. Correct. So what do we get out of it? Did we sell them some F-35s? Fuck yeah, baby. This is America. Okay, so what they do with them, I'm sure we didn't sell them the highest or the latest technology, or we didn't put in the latest chip.
We left we left a little chip out, yes.
Yeah.
How come the missiles don't fire? Why don't missiles fire? I don't understand.
Sorry. War and peace is good for America. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, that's good for us. It's all trickled down. So, and in the end, I'm ecstatic that there is some semblance of peace for an area of the world that has seen nothing but conflict year over year, generation after generation. I think it's just great.
Yeah, we can get back. We could do a 10-part series on just conflicts in the Middle East, going back, before Jesus, really.
I thought we were on to talk about the Haganah and the Irgun.
Yeah,
we'll get into that after Ari and I talk about Sumer. We can get into that.
Yeah, I'm down atop Babylon,
Mesopotamia,
line between two rivers.
That's right.
Of Arabia.
Austin, what do you got?
So I agree with Tim to an extent. Like I do think that business is the right way to go, but I think we have to be slightly isolationist and slightly cautious, because I do think that there's still so much conflict over there. Like there's the humanitarian crisis going on in Yemen. Like we can't just be selling the Saudi Arabians, F-15s and having them bomb the shit out of Yemen, the Yemen citizens. So I think to a degree, I think being slightly isolationist and kind of let them duke it out themselves and not being involved with that shit, but just supporting Israel. I think our involvement with business would be keeping some of our oil ties. We don't really need Saudi Arabia anymore. We're net exporters of oil now because of fracking. So I think the extent would be having like a naval presence around the Strait of Hormuz, making sure no funny business goes on, protecting oil routes. If it's not just for us, it's for other countries. And then obviously keeping a naval presence off the coast of Israel in the Mediterranean just to protect them and having a presence. But I do think that you have to be cautious with all sorts of business over there, because they have a tendency to beat the shit out of each other and kill a lot of innocent civilians in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just going off of that, I mean, U.S. has made that mistake multiple times, especially in the funding Iraq, funding Saddam against Iran.
They also sold Afghanistan, though.
Charlie
the Soviet, they just gave the Taliban a bunch of weapons.
Yep.
Yeah, the same weapons that were used against U.S. soldiers the past 20 years. Yeah,
correct.
Exactly. Ned, I saw you not agreeing with Austin. Do you have something on that too?
Yeah, because it's an area of the world that we've always misplayed. Where first it became like an anti-communist position, like if any of the governments there were leaning towards Russia, who's closer
Truman
regionally. Yeah, exactly. That we would jump in there. We made a huge mistake with. It wasn't a mistake, but it was played out wrong. Where we overthrew a government in Iran in 1952, and we installed the Shah, which the people in Iran were like, who? You know, we don't care. But we stuck him in there thinking it would work out. And instead he imposed like a police state pretty much. While moving the country more towards the West, he did have extremely draconian surveillance. Sabak, I think, was the name of the team, was the name of the police. And they were brutal. Yeah, they were brutal. You know, people disappearing in the middle of the night. So we've always had trouble playing that. One thing I do want to read up about, unless you guys have already done it, in 1952, we literally gave away the American Arabian Oil Company to the Saudis. It was a U.S. owned company, and the Saudis, we gave it to them. We were in a partnership with the government, with the royal family, and then it just went away. And now it's Aramco, the Arabian, Arabian, I forget what it stands for. They're huge. It was one of the biggest oil companies in the world until recently. The price fell, right? But I'd love to know why we gave away our power when we had a real control there of that region through the oil, and we just seem to give it away. I'd like to. There's probably books on it. I'd like to read it. Do you guys ever?
So
do you guys ever know about that?
I've heard about that, and I thought I could be completely off it, but I thought part of that was just reducing the imperialism after World War II. I thought part of that was, you know, good faith.
You might be right, right?
Yeah.
You saw them do it with, obviously Israel's a good example of the UN basically creating Israel in 1947. You see it happening with France and, you know, like Indochina, for example. Granted, they got forced out of Vietnam, but that's happening in the 50s. You see Britain doing it as well in the Middle East and other interests they had around the world as well. I thought it was just a reduction, like reducing imperial. Yeah.
KDL is 100% right. The age of colonialism had come to an end with the end of World War II, and everybody, it was just left a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and everybody was fleeing from being colonialist to being more of an having certain actors be, to use a word I said earlier, have an hegemony like we had with the Philippines and in Japan after the war. So it had to do with colonialism and not being one of the, and frankly, looking at what happened to Britain and the mess that they got themselves into, frankly, after World War I in the Middle East. And the United States said, ain't for us, good luck.
But it was a private company. I agree with what you're saying from a national point, but like United Brands, which was really an extension of the CIA, that was a private company that was, you know, controlled government in Central America.
Right. Bananas, baby, bananas.
Yes, supposedly bananas, right? But but it was a private company, so it wasn't an extension of the United States government. So that's why I'm wondering, why would they do that?
Because it would have taken America to protect our interests in Saudi Arabia. Was, for all intents and purposes, they were Bedouins. There was no fucking country, right? So it would have been us having a presence in Saudi Arabia to protect those interests, and America said, we're done with that shit. And we got a Cold War brewing in Europe. I
want to read up on that.
Now,
I know that's a
good one.
But that was the juxt of it, was to not become a colonial power.
Now, the more interesting part of that to look into, Dad, might be the deals the U.S. got from that company once they handed it over. You know, the oil deals they got, or the promises they got from that company after they're like, no, we don't want it. They're like, oh, yeah, you can have it, Saudis, it's fine.
But my original point is still the same, though. It's like we've always misread that region. That's why the rebirth of Israel was highly contested, of course. But we can talk about that in a different subject. But that's the only one I think that Americans can understand. And even in 1948, I'm not even sure if many Americans understood Judaism as, you know, the third religion. It was only in, you know, regionalized parts of this country. So it wasn't like.
Well, it still only is in regionalized parts of this country.
Yeah, but now through media, it's, you know, people are more aware of it. But
the media.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you mean by that?
What are you trying to say, Ned?
What are you trying to say?
The media.
The controlled media?
What are you doing?
That for another show?
No.
Whoa.
One of your a co-host on one of your other shows won't be happy about that statement.
Actually,
just come on and say it.
He told me to write it. No, I don't mean like that at all. What I mean is, as media has expanded, we've become more aware of other cultures, of course.
Now, why do you think that is?
Because we have TVs.
I know, but who's, you know, in charge of the TVs?
I'm in charge of my TV.
Oh, I'm saying networks. Yeah.
Oh, I don't watch networks. I
Oh,
stream.
okay.
Yeah. No,
Who's
but
the
what
streamer?
I'm saying is though the idea of Israel being there as and it's always had a contested relationship with Christianity, but after World War II, I think I know the Catholics took a totally different 180-degree position on the Jewish faith, and now it's more embraced. So they don't.
It only
But they don't
took
understand.
2,000 years.
2,000 years, yeah.
I mean, the Pope during World
1950
War
years.
II,
got
the
there.
Pope during World War II turned his eye. Like he just turned a blind eye to
Absolutely.
Holocaust.
We
He
did.
absolutely did. Absolutely.
Not
Nazi
very
collaborator, in fact.
Yeah.
Yep.
And some, yeah,
Not
it could
very
be
holy. Do you guys think that Palestine got screwed with the Balfour Declaration? Do you think they got a raw end of the deal?
Do you want to give a little background on that first, Ari?
The Balfour Declaration?
Yeah.
So you got guy Balfour, like they're in World War I. Basically, they sent a telegram to I don't know some guy named Balfour delivers to someone else saying, "Hey, like the British support a Jewish nation in British Palestine."
There were throughout World War I, like the early 19 teens, there was a massive Zionist movement in England, and there were several like Jewish people that were going over to what is now Israel already to kind of form the Israeli state, but it wasn't recognized. And then after World War I, the Balfour Declaration basically was like, yeah, we recognize this Zionist
It was a
movement.
promise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
but do you think that the Palestinians, because there was a Jewish minority who lived there, do you think that the Palestinians who had been living there for thousands of years,
No.
did you think they got screwed at all?
But they weren't
there wasn't a Palestinian state there. It was all part of the
No,
Ottoman
I'm not
Empire.
saying that. I'm saying
or
that like the people who already lived there,
Yeah.
who are now saying like, hey, like by the way, this is no longer your land. Do you think they got kind of a raw end of the deal?
You want my
Tim?
2 cents?
Yeah, I mean it's around. I'm just asking around.
At that point in time, absolutely not. I think are we at a Chinese restaurant?
I keep dropping stuff.
I know.
I gotta play around with tools.
I'm still reeling from my anti-Semitism there. I'm like,
Well, Ari's nervous about his
trip
this weekend. They're gonna meet themselves some folk.
You ever seen Deliverance, Tim?
Right.
That's exactly what I'm expecting. You I got a pretty mouth.
Sure,
You're going to
Deliverance.
You're going to Deliverance country, actually.
I know.
Now squeal like a pig. So, the way I look at it is, Britain did away with what they considered to be a nuisance, which were the Jews that were calling for their own state. And what did they do? They gave them a strip of fucking land that they thought no one could cultivate. And they said, you want it? You got it. Here you go, brother. And then they kept the Palestinians under British control, and they were citizens, if I'm not mistaken, at that point in time. So were they screwed from a colonial perspective? Well, yeah. I mean, they weren't. They were beholden to an overlord in an island that most had never seen, that were thousands of miles away. But what the British did was, I think they took the what they considered to be the annoying ever-presence of the Jews and said, you know what, we're done dealing with you. I mean, the Jews fought the British for a state. They didn't fight Palestine. They fought the British.
Correct.
And they said, we're done with you. They were enemies. And they said, here's what you got. So I put it in the context of, I don't think the Palestinians get screwed, because what happened where the British said, we'll stick with you guys. We're taking the Jewish people and putting them out on their own. And I don't think they had the foreshadowing to see how innovative these people could be. And I use these people in generalities because they created a country out of nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't think they saw that. So I don't think they got screwed. Now are they screwed? Absolutely. But not then, no.
But to answer the question, the Jews that left Russia specifically and literally walked to Israel, to the homeland, it was a provincial backwater of the Ottoman Empire. It had been ignored. Even Jerusalem, which is supposedly the third holiest city in Islam, was pretty much in disrepair. I won't say it's like it was a dump, but it was not like Jeddah or Mecca.
Holy city's a dump.
Well, I mean,
it was. It was
historically the Muslims destroyed Jerusalem. They destroyed the Sacred Center, whatever it's called,
Church of the Sepulchre.
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, Yeah, it was
So-
completely run down.
So Austin was right when they came when they migrated in specifically from Eastern Europe, really Russia, because they had horrible pogroms there under the Tsars. They turned the land fertile. I mean, they learned to irrigate and took the desert and made it green.
You know who taught
And
them
once
that?
they got Sumerians did that.
Sumerians.
Exactly.
Fertile
Sumerians.
Crescent, baby.
Fertile Crescent. And between two rivers.
That's right.
Oh, he's black and white again.
Hasn't
Yeah,
gone
he
black
goes-
and white.
Don't
When you
drop
do
any
that-
silverware.
It's an Allen wrench.
So they weren't even. I don't even think they were called Palestinians then. It was
British Palestine.
British Palestine, but they weren't called Palestinians. They were Arabs. They thought of themselves as Arabs. It was only later, I think, into the '60s that they began to think of themselves more nationalistically as
Yeah,
Palestinians.
right. They
So
were
at the time, no.
they were tribes. They were all tribes at that point in time.
Mhm.
The Sauds were Bedouins. I mean, now
Yeah.
they've got a country named after them.
And to be, if you ever, and also they opened the borders when they were declared. They actually had worked together pretty well, and then the British became too stretched too thin to govern them properly after post World War II, right?
Yeah.
So between
people were tired.
Yep, and they were like, you know what, we don't want to handle it anymore. Let the UN decide. And then when the UN didn't follow what the Brits wanted to do, that's when the Brits divided it. Just like they did India, they partitioned India, Ireland, a lot of their former colonies when they weren't happy with the result.
We
of
got
what they wanted to do.
Bangladesh.
Yep, we got Bangladesh and Pakistan.
Pakistan.
So that's when Israel actually went to war, a guerrilla war. Menachem Begin, who later signed the peace treaty, was a member of that unit that was fighting against the British overlordship. And they themselves could be considered terrorists if you really want to define them that way, because they blew up the
Depends
King
what
David
side you're on.
Hotel. Yeah.
They were actually a lot of them were flagged as terrorist organizations by the British and by the UN. And by the way, some of our friends are not going to appreciate this. There were a lot of commie pukes at the beginning of the state of Israel. Easy boomer.
Yeah, Jesus
And you know
Christ,
what?
take it easy.
Israel handled it correctly, because you don't hear of any Israeli commies anymore, do you?
No.
No, buff and go, fuck them.
No.
Goodbye. Don't care what religion or race you are. You're a commie. Bye-bye. You get what you deserve.
Discussing the Middle East, Tim gives an Italian.
Talking about commie pukes.
Ugh, I hate them.
Manages to sneak communism into the discussion of the Middle East. That's great.
So, but Israel, and even from day one, knew they were about to go to war. They're going to be attacked from all sides, probably pushed into the sea. But the Palestinians, the Arabs living within the country of Israel, as it was awarded or carved out by the UN, were offered full citizenship, full rights. Even though it was a Jewish state, they recognized the fact that they were there. And I feel bad because I think those people were definitely manipulated by outside forces.
Could not agree. They actually got along very
well when they were left
very
alone.
well.
Exactly.
They had a shared culture. They had shared respect, shared culture.
They're all Semitics. They're all the same sub-race of people. So just different religions.
And in Islam, dirty little secret that today's religious leaders don't want to talk about is the fact that they respected Judaism, and they were held in high regard, and vice versa. You're right. They all came from the same area.
Ari was hoping for like some anti-Islamic.
I was waiting for something bad to happen. They all come out of Abraham, It's the three religions. They got the same, same one God. They got a lot in common, kind of. But I don't know. If I was a Muslim and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you can have full citizenship in this Jewish state, I wouldn't be too thrilled about it. That's all. That's just me personally.
Yeah, but what if you'd lived there and you were born there, you lived there, your grandparents, your great grandparents, you've always lived there. What does it matter? And by the way,
that's what I was going to say.
You had Brits and Turks as your overlords before.
I feel like it's definitely the phrasing of like the Jewish state. Like
yes,
it's just that.
Because if you're a religious fanatic, why would you want to live in if you're surrounded by theocracies?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden someone's just like, hey, like you're now living in a Jewish state. I feel like that's a hard, that's hard to sell.
The problem is you couldn't call it anything other than the Jewish state. Like
they
were going there because they were Jewish. Like that was the whole point of Israel.
Yep.
Is it true that if you are Jewish, you are automatically considered?
I believe so.
That is true.
Well, yeah.
In fact, you have honorary citizenship.
If you have one grandparent that's Jewish, you have the right to return. You can go live in Israel.
Hence
Pretty
the
cool.
Jewish
one
state.
Jewish grandparent or one grandparent from Israel?
No, one. If you have Adam's probably watching this. Well, when he does, he'll correct me. But
Who's Adam?
If you, the father of all of us. But
Adam's
if you have
just a
one
relative.
Jewish, one of your
That's who
four
Adam is.
grandparents, you have the right of return. I think it's the same thing in Ireland too.
I'm marrying a
Irish,
Jew, so I should probably know this.
It's very similar in Ireland.
Your
yes.
children will have no problem.
Yeah,
If you can,
I think if you can directly, I think it's a grandparent or a great grandparent. If you can like directly link your lineage to them, to being citizens of Ireland, you can get citizenship pretty easily.
Yeah.
In Ireland?
That's correct.
We
Yes,
were talking about
that's
Israel.
correct.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, we're
do the
talking
same in
about
Ireland.
like a right of return, like a right of return.
Yeah, my uncle was talking about doing that.
Oh, really?
My
He was
mother,
talking about doing that. He was talking about doing that if Trump got reelected. So that just tells you what side of the aisle he's on.
Well,
But I think Austin's right. It doesn't go that deep. It's only like
No.
1 or 2 generations because my
Yeah, it is.
ancestors been here for a hell of a long time, and I could not claim dual citizenship.
no,
It has to be somewhat recent.
my great grandmother, my mother's grandmother was Jewish, and she always said if she's always thought if things get bad here, I can always move to Israel. So
Yeah. So I think it's the fact that it got made official. That's what I think the biggest issue with the Israel-Palestine thing is, because like you said, they were basically coexisting in that time period before World War II. I think it's when stuff gets a label put on it, that's when it becomes serious. And it's almost, and I don't think it's the people themselves, but I think it was outside forces, like you said, almost forcing you to choose a side.
yeah,
Almost forcing you to be like, well, I'm not Israeli. I mean, everything was fine before that, but this is an Israeli state now. I feel like the minority all of a sudden.
it's not even an Israeli
really
state, it's a Jewish state.
the
Yeah.
Jewish state. Yeah.
Or a
That's the
Jewish state.
kicker.
Okay.
That's the kicker.
Well, bigger
Yeah.
question: why is it that so many Middle Eastern countries are so anti-Palestinian? It's almost as vehement as their hatred of Israel. I mean, let's expose the dirty little secret and the elephant in the room. Arabs are no friends of the Palestinians. They've been kicking them around like the redheaded stepchild
Yeah.
for generations and using them as pawns, absolute pawns, to do their dirty work, to use them to get relief and funding and pit them against Israel, and it's a shame because
and to distract them from their real problems as well with their financing the hatred. Yeah.
there's 550,000 Palestinian refugees throughout the Middle East. Why?
Yeah.
Israel has always said, you want to come and live here, you can live here. It's going to be within the state of Israel. You'll be a citizen or however it works for them. But you're welcome to come here. And every one of their brethren has said, we don't want you.
Right.
But it's not us that's the problem. It's Israel.
Right.
I just don't get
and Jordan
how that
Jordan
jives.
has taken them too, by the way. But Jordan has said like if there was a huge refugee problem. They took them from Syria too during the civil war that's been going on there. But after a while, they said, our resources were it. But nobody, you're absolutely right, Tim. Nobody else is taking Syrian or Palestinian refugees anywhere.
Saudi Arabia is a massive, massive country.
Not a lot in it though. There's no rivers in Saudi Arabia.
And there was nothing in Israel, right? I know it's different, but there was nothing in Israel.
You have a river though. You got the Jordan River.
You love rivers. You like Johnny Canal from Saturday Night Live. We're gonna build a canal here
So
and a canal there.
there was a Mesopotamia
I agree.
in Israel.
But there's no
Which
way
one is on the left and which one's on the right? Tigris, Euphrates.
Euphrates is on the left.
Okay. How do you spell Euphrates?
Starts with an E.
Okay.
with
When
today's
is
technology.
he going on?
When is he going off on his trip?
With today's technology, there's no way that there couldn't be a homeland in Saudi Arabia. There's just no way. And the fact that there isn't tells me a lot about
there's
how
nothing
Saudi
in Saudi
treats their
Arabia.
brothers.
It's desert.
Right.
But you could do something you could build a coastal city. Look at Dubai. Dubai was
Exactly.
nothing.
Literally man-made. Yeah. Look at China building islands.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well,
you could build
they're
a city.
dirty
You could build a
communists,
city.
so we're not going to do that.
Look at that.
Yeah, but you could build a city on the coast. I know what Tim is saying. And put an industry there. Find an industry and put it there.
But why
could do it.
would Saudi Arabia not just do that themselves, like for themselves, as opposed to making it for the Palestinians?
Do they need it?
Well, I don't know if it's a moneymaker, like if there's enough to
Money.
support a whole country, then
Exactly, because they don't want to own
why
the problem.
wouldn't they?
That goes exactly to what I'm saying, which is they pit Palestine against Israel because they don't want to own the quote unquote the problem. The
Right.
people aren't the problem. The problem is, what do we do with this group of people who are laying claim to a partition of land that hasn't been developed, and they've been subjugated by everybody and their brother? Well, there's plenty of land throughout that area that they could be not put on, but that they could go to and create a society, create a culture, and create a homeland. Saudi Arabia is not stepping up and saying, sure, we'll give them some desert. Why? I don't understand why. If there's nothing there, what's the harm? It's what Britain did to the Jews. Here you go. Here's your piece of shit. Good luck.
So to kind of come full circle on that, do we think this
Give the
peace
Mediterranean
agreement?
Sea. The
What was
British
that?
gave the Jews the Mediterranean Sea, like a large chunk of the eastern part of it.
They gave
And
them-
How is
they
that
gave
comparable
them-
to the middle of the desert?
But they gave them their traditional ancestral homeland.
Yes, but what Tim is saying is that there's, if you were to give the Palestinians like a chunk of land in the desert, they'd be happy because the British
No.
gave the Jews a chunk of land in the desert. But they gave them a chunk of land in the desert with the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea,
but what I'm saying is
which
today,
is way different than just being surrounded by sand dunes.
yeah, I
but you've
agree.
got-
But today, you like Ned was saying, today we've got the technology to make it habitable, to absolutely make that habitable. There's no way, no way, shape, or form that they couldn't transform a desert or a portion of the desert into some sort of livable environment. No way. Back then, I totally agree with you. There's just nothing there. You can't survive. So
But I'm just looking at a map though. There's plenty of like areas in the Red Sea, where they have a seaport, access to trade. On the south, no, you've got Yemen and you've got Oman that kind of block off the end of the Arabian Peninsula. Then you've got
The Persian Gulf too, but that's already
and then-
crowded enough.
and right, I was going to say, yeah, in the Persian Gulf, like south of Kuwait, between Kuwait and Bahrain, there's like some open area as well. You could do it. You don't have to be in the middle of the desert.
You know what the scariest thought of all this is to me? That what we're talking about is literally how Israel was created. People who really didn't know all the, had ideas.
They drew a line,
right?
And they were like, "Here you go."
It's amazing to me. And it used to be called what? Transjordan, that area.
Yeah.
And they said, well, let's rename it. These tribes never got along with each other, but let's call it Iran. Let's call it Iraq. Let's create Saudi. It's amazing to me. And so at least we admit we don't fully know. And these people are in power and said, well, this is the way it's going to be. And
yeah, they took absolutely
yours.
nothing in consideration for like tribes, nothing for ethnicities.
Nope.
They just drew literally a line in the sand.
No, a lot of people in the Middle East didn't understand the concept of countries until after World War II.
That's true.
Yeah,
actually, World War One, because
World War One.
If you guys, RA, have you ever read the 7 Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence?
I have not.
Lawrence of Arabia.
It's his biography, right? And it's really good. But then you read there's also a great biography on him. Israel was the last, even though with the Balfour Declaration right after World War One, and Sykes-Picot becoming open. It was supposed to be a secret, by the way. It was supposed to be a quiet, secret deal between France and Germany, and it blew up and got out to the press.
France and Britain.
Yeah. What did I say?
Germany.
I'm sorry, France and Britain. You're right, absolutely. They just divided up over north and south, and like oil fields. When now oil is becoming more and more important, they didn't think of Israel at the time. And even if you watch the movie, if you read his biography or you see the movie Lawrence of Arabia, which is a great movie, it was total fucking chaos. They had no idea. The British had no idea who these people were and what they wanted. They just knew that they needed to control all of the power stations and electricity and the hospitals. And if they didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. So there was really kind of a hands-off, then brutal hand-on attitude in that whole area. So here's the Jews in around Jerusalem, and they weren't even given a thought at all. So when you say, okay, I'm sorry, long way to go. What I'm saying is, if we talk about how they didn't give any consideration to how they put Israel together. They didn't put much consideration to how any of it was put together.
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
They just cut deals with Bedouin chieftains and made them kings.
Yes. Right. T.E. Lawrence at one point was one of the most powerful people in the Middle East.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. And he rallied, like KDL was saying, he rallied these tribes that had never worked together to work on behalf of people and entities they'd never heard of.
He believed his orders that he was given, which was rally, get a force, a guerrilla force, and then build it to an army to fight the Ottomans, and you'll get Arab independence. He believed that. So he was a bit gullible in that regard, because that was never going to be the plan. Let's get the Ottomans out of here. That was the plan.
All right, so I think we've solved all the Middle East problems in the last 45
we
minutes.
just
That was
did.
good.
Or created more.
or created more.
All right, we're
Americans
waiting
have a
for,
tendency to do that, it seems
waiting
like.
for more
so maybe that's
scrolls,
possible.
though.
You guys didn't hit on my predetermined scrolls, fortunately.
I only saw two.
I know, I've got 4 of them, but we didn't mention that.
You want to roll them real quick just to
No,
show?
not
just
really.
to-
Mesopotamia.
All right.
By the way, the Euphrates is the west river, and the Tigris is the east river.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I have a question similar to what you guys were telling me about, or warning me about RA. Oman, a country that seems to get overlooked. We all hear about Yemen, UAE, Saudi Arabia. What does anybody know about Oman? Anybody
It's a sultanate.
know anything?
I know it
Just-
should be a
it's a
lot more
sultanate?
powerful based off where it's located, and it's not.
Wasn't there a U.S. ship that got bombed there just before 9/11? That
Was
started
it
off
the Cole?
Yeah.
USS Cole. I mean, it like KDL saying. I mean, it's at the tip of the Arabian Peninsula.
Yep.
It's got infrastructure. They've got highways, but you never hear about Oman. Is it
A lot of natural gas.
is it? And Ned, did you say they're a sultanate?
Yeah, they're Assad is Hebrew. There we go. He's dropping them now. He's dropping them all.
You thought we'd talk
yeah,
about the 6 Day War at some point in the fucking history buffs. But
Seriously.
here we are.
But it's a sultanate. It's very wealthy. It's a lot of natural gas, like the other, like Bahrain as well.
How come we don't hear much about it?
Because they're pretty quiet and they just go about their business.
You think they're going communist, Tim? Is that your fear?
No.
You gotta turn red.
It's a theocracy. Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
You guys, you're touching
Look,
that live wire.
I gotta. My industry.
Where were you 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, we had 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we had communism.
Oh, you don't think I know that?
Oh, you watched it? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you kidding me?
You were one of the
Is it
16
H1?
views.
What's that?
You were one of the 16 views. You know.
When I saw that you were doing that as opposed to the age of exploration, all right, which is one of your favorites, I will say there was a little blood rush. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
I like that.
Nothing wrong with killing me some communists. Let's see.
Commie pubes.
It's a very rich country, Tim. I'm still going back to Oman.
Yeah, I just wonder why we don't hear more, or why they're not more powerful. I mean, it's geez, it looks like it might even have some great beachfront. Who knows?
They do. Yeah, yes, they do.
Right.
And for a little country, they have in my business, they have a pretty global airline. I mean, to go, to serve a little country like that. They got freighters going all over the world, passenger flights everywhere. Oman Air.
Doesn't UAE also?
Oh yeah, Emirates.
Air Emirates.
No, it's Emirates, the largest airline in the world.
Yeah, so they sponsor half of like the English Premier League. I feel like half
I
of
didn't
like
know that.
all
Actually,
European soccer.
half of Europe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Talk about a
Every
strategic.
European sports team's jersey.
Wow.
yeah. Fly Emirates.
Oh, you know what? Oman. So here's a little fun fact.
Oh,
Oman is at the very tip of the UAE. So it's not actually the UAE that pushes so far into the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
It's actually Oman, which is
correct.
separated in between by UAE.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great.
Well.
Now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole tonight for about 3 hours.
but Oman.
Oman is
Fucking
pretty cool,
Oman.
but it's a theocracy, but it's not as strict as Saudi Arabia, but it's nearly there because of the proximity, right? But in the United Arab Emirates, there's different emirates doing different things. So like Sharjah by the way, it's run by one family, and like one of the sons, I think it might be a nephew now, he is the Sultan of His Royal Highness of Sharjah. Their speciality is education. So everybody, all the families, the higher up, the Emirati families go to Sharjah for their education, and then they go to Europe for their final education. Dubai was given the financial responsibility. So Dubai is where all the money is. Abu Dhabi was more of what was it? I think that was the one for natural gas and drilling.
It's where the finance is.
It's really cool. It's really a cool setup. It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
Sorry.
Talk about Oman.
That's it. Let's go. Good night,
I
everyone.
find it interesting. Thank you, Ned.
Thank you,
At one-
Ned.
Austin's
At one
asleep.
point,
I said Austin's for the like 5 minutes or so.
At one point, I think me and RA locked eyes.
Interrupt me, asshole.
What the fuck is this?
No, I was listening. I was looking at a map of Oman. I was trying to figure out what everything that he was talking about.
All right.
Yep,
Now you
there it
can
is.
That's
see it.
funny.
All right.
We
All
done or
right.
what?
Yeah, that'll do it. Tim, thanks so much.
I guess
for
that'll
joining us.
do it.
Definitely have you
Sorry.
back on
Sorry I
again.
bored you.
Definitely won't discuss
Two
communism
boomers
with you
talking
because
about
that might get us
Oman.
taken off of YouTube, but we'll definitely have you back on again at
Wait,
some
am I
point.
officially a boomer? Hold on. Am I a
Yeah, you're
boomer?
a boomer.
I'm not even a
By
boomer.
our standards,
I'm
you're
born
boomers.
through it.
Yeah,
but-
that's true. Yeah, right. You're right. It's all relative. I guess
all
I am.
relative.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'll own it.
boomer.
Whatever. And maybe when I shave this stupid beard, I won't be a boomer.
Maybe.
anymore.
Or stop talking about killing commie pukes.
Tommy pukes.
I'm not
Stop
talking about
getting
killing
high.
them.
Callahan.
I will gladly do it. Let's not talk
Easy,
about
easy,
it.
Jerry. Easy, Jerry.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah, maggots.
Socialists steal your soul. Commies
Yeah.
take your life.
Yeah.
And I will not let that happen. So any of you Antifa commie fucks out there, come see me. I got something for
Okay.
you.
Good.
Good parting
Well said.
words.
Yep. I love it, actually.
That's all I got. Anyone?
Same
I was
here.
gonna have a heart out on that. Yeah.